Hey, what's going on? This is Sports Truth. I'm your host, Jordan Harris. Today we're going to be talking about the fact that Miami finally landed a transfer quarterback. We'll do a quick little deep dive, talk about where the quarterback comes from, what school he's transferring from, and then we'll talk about some stuff as far as his original recruitment out of high school, maybe some things that you hadn't heard before. Before we jump into that, though, I want to tell a quick story about this quarterback because this goes a few weeks ago. My wife and I went to the Bahamas. And when we got back from the Bahamas, we took our family out to eat at this pizza restaurant. And I've told this story before on this channel, but we took her out to a restaurant, and I'm facing this way. My daughter is facing my oldest daughter, which is right here, Mariah. She's facing me, but there's a TV behind me. So all of a sudden she says, "Man, that team is getting killed." And obviously there was a TV behind me and there's a game on behind me. So I turned around and looked to see what the game was, and it was two teams that I was not really familiar with. And I saw the score was 59-0. I was like, golly, like the game was almost over. And I'm like, how do you play that long? The other team puts up 59 points and you don't even get a field goal? I was like, that is crazy. Like I couldn't hardly process that. I remember thinking, like, I cannot understand how the coach can't draw up some kind of scheme to give him at least a field goal, or how the quarterback can't make some kind of play where somebody just scampers down the field and randomly gets a 6-point touchdown. Like, I'm like, how does that not happen in a full game? 59-0, that's crazy. So, turns out the quarterback that was on the losing end, like when people say God has quite the personality, like obviously he does, because the quarterback on that losing team had no idea he would be transferring to my Hurricanes, which is unbelievable. That game was South Dakota State versus University of Albany. And University of Albany's quarterback, Reese Poffenbarger, he's the guy who's transferring to the Hurricanes. So he was the quarterback that I was saying, how do you not make at least one play? So obviously, yeah, God does have quite the personality. So let's go ahead and do a deep dive into who Reese Poffenbarger is. So at a high school, I did not realize, but he was a pretty good high school football player. So he was a 3-star out of high school, and he's also a 3-star transfer rating as well. They do different ratings for when you're just coming out of high school, and then when you're in the transfer portal, they give you a totally different transfer rating. And he happened to have the same 3 stars on both. So he's about 6 feet. Some people are saying he's 6.5 or 6'1", but he weighs 208 pounds. One thing that I did not know about him, because I did a video recently about all of these different quarterbacks that were still out there that Miami could potentially land. And whenever I did that video, I didn't realize that, I think I'm just going to call him RPB from now on, because that name it's a name, boy. So I'm just going to call him RPB from now on, okay? So one thing I did not know about RPB is that he actually walked on at Old Dominion. I did not know that. I thought that was pretty cool. So even though he had a 3-star high school rating and he did have some offers from different schools, especially nearby where he's from, he ended up walking on at Old Dominion, did not play there, and then ended up transferring to Albany. So then he has 2 years of eligibility remaining because he did play 2 years at the University of Albany. Some accolades to talk about from RPB is that he was the Maryland State Player of the Year football, so that's really impressive. Anytime you're the player of the year for the entire state, you got to be impressed by that. I also read about his lack of recruitment coming out of high school, which I thought was pretty cool because I could definitely relate. So RPB was saying that when he was in high school and people started to do their recruitment on him, it was like just before his junior season. And he said at that time he was 5'9". So he was a short guy playing quarterback, and people didn't care to have a 5'9" quarterback playing for the University of Alabama or University of Miami or wherever it may be. So the big schools, they looked at him as just being too small, and they like, hey, catch me later, but you're not ready for us just yet. And I can relate to that because I was 5'2" in high school, and then I jumped up to 6'3". So I can definitely relate to that. So he's just a late bloomer, which is part of why his recruitment didn't go as he planned. He also talked about how that, like being looked over, how that fuels his fire today, which is part of why he's able to excel at all the different levels that he's jumping from. Um, Also, he was the FCS leader in touchdowns. He had 36 touchdowns, and then he was the FCS leader in yards thrown too. So he had 3,603 yards. And if you're not familiar with FCS, so FBS is where it's Miami, it's Florida State, it's Alabama, it's Georgia, all of the big name schools that you're really familiar with when it comes to college football. That's FBS. FCS is the remaining schools that most people have not heard of, like University of Albany, North Dakota State, South Dakota State. All of those schools, they're in a different tier of college football. There's 128 teams in that tier, and he just so happened to be the leader in touchdowns and the leader in passing yards, which, I mean, you gotta respect that. It is impressive, right? He's on the FCS All-American team as well, and like I said earlier, had 36 touchdowns. His touchdown to interception ratio is really good. He was 3 touchdowns short of having a 3-to-1 ratio, which is really impressive. And then his completion percentage was 58.6%, which is not great. You typically want that to be somewhere around 65% is what you really want. So the fact that he's at 58.6, it's not anything to write home about. But yeah, what I've seen in his highlights, because I have not watched a full game of his. I'm not going to lie to you. I've not watched a full game of his, but what I've read about him and what I've seen in highlights is that the dude throws the ball deep all of the time. And if you're throwing the ball deep, obviously that will make your completion rating drop down quite a bit. So that's that on him. I know you can't see this slide here, but what this is just a game log of all the games that he played this past season. So I want to go over some of the games he played, and then I want to talk about my biggest concern about what I'm seeing on this screen, okay? So let's just go over some of them. Marshall, they lost 21-17. He was 22 for 38, 194 yards, and a touchdown with no interceptions. He did have 15 carries for a touchdown, which one thing that if you watch highlights of him, you will see that he can run. He is an athlete. That's a fact. He is an athlete. Hawaii, they lost 31-20. He was 10 for 31, 93 yards, 0 touchdowns, and an interception. Now, Hawaii is an FBS school, so they are on a higher tier than Albany. But to have 10 completions for 93 yards when you throw the ball 31 times is nuts, because if you just throw 10 screen passes, you will end up getting you'll get 93 yards. So that's oh man, that's rough. That's really rough. Morgan, they lost double overtime, 23-17. He was 10 for 23 for 142 yards with 2 touchdowns and an interception. Rhode Island, they won 35-10. He was 15 for 27, 4 touchdowns and an interception. Monmouth, they won 41-0. He was 19 for 29, 4 touchdowns and 1 interception. And he ran 5 times for 31 yards. And then that South Dakota State game I talked about, they lost 59-0. Boy, 59-0. Shutout in the playoffs. That's nasty. So they ended up getting 34 completions, 30 completions. He threw the ball 44 times, 232 yards, 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, sacked twice, carried the ball 9 times for 29 yards. Okay, so those are the stats, okay? So those are the stats. What is my biggest concern? My biggest concern, the only way that I could really explain it, the way that I process things in my crazy brain, is this video game that came out in 1981, I think it is, called Frogger. All right? So if you watch Frogger, or if you don't know anything about it, let me give you a quick schooling. Let me school you real quick. So you want to take this frog from this sidewalk, and you want to avoid all the traffic that's driving by and get this frog all the way to the other side. That's the goal of the game. So in Frogger, on the first level, this is level 1. The first level, the cars, the traffic is real light. The cars move real slow. It's easy to fit this frog in between these cars because the traffic moves so slow. It's easy to get this frog onto this log and onto the back of that turtle and all that because the traffic moves so slow. But once you get up to level 10, level 15, level 20, the traffic gets real heavy and the cars move real fast. The windows are a lot tighter, and that goes for the traffic and it goes for everything else on the game. Do you get where I'm coming from on this? So my thing is, when you're playing against South Dakota State, the windows when you're throwing the ball, much wider. Big wide open windows. People on the defensive end, they don't run nearly as fast. They're moving slow, so you can hit those windows a lot easier than you can whenever you got Clemson on the other side. And those guys are 5-star recruits who move a lot faster than the walk-ons who are playing at Albany because they were a 1-star athlete or a 2-star athlete. No shade, no disrespect. I'm just telling the truth there. That's my biggest concern. Is he's used to the speed and the size of the windows at Albany, and then once he plays at Miami, he sees that the receivers move at a different speed. He sees that the cornerbacks move at a different speed. He sees that the middle linebacker who stands in the middle of the field in a zone defense, he can shift back and forth a whole lot faster than a guy who plays for Maine or William and Mary. Okay? So that's my biggest concern. So, yeah, you should be afraid of what goes on in my mind if I'm looking at my favorite football team, and the first thing that comes to mind is Frogger, right? That's just how my brain works. Sorry. But that is pretty much our quick deep dive on who Reese Poffenbarger is, a.k.a. RPB, as far as I'm concerned. Um, when it comes to, so my mentality right now is I'm hoping and praying that our coaches did not promise this guy that he's going to come in and be the starter. I hope they didn't just promise him a starting position, because I think that would be lunacy. I think that would just be crazy. I believe that we will be better suited if Ja'Carri Brown starts, or if he's the front runner. Let's just say he's the front runner, and then they have an active competition on who is to start this coming year. I would prefer Ja'Carri Brown to start. That's just me. And then I know people are saying, well, Emory beat Ja'Carri out. Okay, yeah, he did. But I saw Emory play a couple of games, and I saw him miss a bunch of open receivers. And then I saw Ja'Carri Brown play, and I saw him throw it into the chest of a linebacker. But when I watched both of their films, Ja'Carri Brown looked better than Emory. It happens. Sometimes when you get hurt, the person that comes in and plays instead of you, they take your spot. Ask Joe Montana. Ask Drew Bledsoe. That's what happens. It happens sometimes. So I'm hoping that Ja'Carri Brown goes into this offseason as the front runner for the starting position, and then they come in and they do something that is almost obsolete now, and it's starting to leave people's brains, and people do not believe in it anymore. But I'm hoping that they do this old-fashioned thing that's called compete. I'm hoping that they let these quarterbacks come in, and whoever the best player is, they get the starting job. Sure, if you want to start off with somebody being the front runner like Ja'Carri Brown, it makes sense, because he started for the Hurricanes in their last game. That makes sense. But let them come in. Whoever plays the best in the spring game, whoever looks the best with the first team reps, whoever performs the best, let them be the starter. I would prefer Ja'Carri Brown to start, but if he cannot outperform RPB, then he does not need to be the starter. It's that simple. So, do I have a preference? Yes, I do. But at the same time, I just want the Hurricanes to win, and I want the best player to play. That's all I care about. Let the best player play. So, that's my thoughts. What are y'all's thoughts on this? Are you excited about RPB coming in? I'm sorry. I'm going to mess this man's name up all season. Are you excited about RPB playing? Are you excited about him transferring over to Miami? I'd be lying if I sat here and said that I'm ecstatic about RPB, because I did a video before, and I'm like, nah, this is not the guy. So just because he chose the Hurricanes, I'm not gonna all of a sudden say, yeah, he's it. Like, no. So let me know what your thoughts are on it. Are you excited? Are you not? Do you think he should have stayed where he was, or he should have transferred somewhere else? Do you think that he should be given the starting role because he's actually got experience playing in college football and he's put some really good numbers up? Um, Curious to know all that stuff. So let me know your thoughts. As always, you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I truly appreciate that. So God bless. Take care. Peace.